For more on this, let's bring in retired four-star General Jack Keane, chairman of the Institute for the Study of War, former vice chief of staff for the Army, and a Fox News senior strategic analyst. General, always great to have you with us, and we could go in a different direction here right from the outset. I want to ask you about the nexus between the Secretary of State and the Secretary of Defense. How do they work together, especially when there are so many issues happening globally, and the priorities for Messrs. Rubio and Hegseth?
Well, they're linked together by President Trump and his national security and foreign policy, and the practical way that they're linked together is the National Security Advisor, Mike Waltz, as they meet their deputies first and then themselves to deal with these very challenging and tough issues as part of the National Security Council. So, yes, there's lots of coordination with these two departments for all the obvious reasons there needs to be.
Let me ask you specifically about one of the priorities, General, and that is what is happening on the ground in Gaza. I looked at some of the pictures this morning of the hostage exchange. It is gut-wrenching to see that. There's outrage, frankly, in Israel, as you can well imagine, over the conditions of those who have been returned.
Yeah, well, there's no doubt about it. I mean, for many of them, the conditions obviously have been inhumane and horrific, and you can see that certainly the frailties of these three males that have been released. But the good news here is that this ceasefire does seem to be holding. It's 42 days is the length of it, and hopefully the hostages will continue to be released in exchange for these prisoners. But we're on a collision course here. And because Phase 2 negotiations have begun, and Phase 2 negotiations are demanding that Hamas give up governance of Gaza and disarm, and Israel permanently pull out all the IDF from Gaza. Given the fact that Hamas is still in charge of Gaza, it's unlikely that Israel will leave, and it's certainly unlikely that Hamas is going to give up governance and disarm. So we're on a collision course with, at some point, the likelihood of returning to hostilities inside Gaza is quite real.
Yeah, and looking at the pictures, as you point out, General, Hamas shows absolutely no signs of walking away or peacefully giving up their arms, and so it's highly likely, I agree with you, that we're going to end up in a very hostile circumstance. Let me ask you about the Secretary's let me ask you about the president's decision to float this idea of maybe changing the paradigm in Gaza, getting the U.S. in there to do some things, maybe clear things out just a bit. I've seen it, and it's horrific what's happened on the ground there. From a military perspective, is that something even doable, and how would you maintain the peace?
Well, first of all, I think President Trump's proposal is, as you indicated, a paradigm shift, and it really points up the complete hypocrisy of what we've been dealing with. On the one hand, we have countries in the region proposing a two-state solution for 50 years. On the other hand, we have Iran, Hezbollah, and Hamas attempting to destroy the state of Israel for almost as many years themselves. And the likelihood is that neither one of them are ever going to be achieved, the two-state solution or the destruction of the state of Israel. So I think what President Trump has done is looked at this and says, why do we keep talking about these impossible ends when they're not going to be achieved? Why don't we think of something different? And I think hopefully that will produce a catalytic of ideas of doing something and having the countries in the region accept some responsibility here. I mean, it's been so painful to watch that Egypt shut the door and not permit the Gazans to move out of Gaza during hostilities these last couple of years. And all they had to do was set up camps in Sinai. The UN would have done it. Arabs would have paid for it. The United States would have helped provide security with biometrics and the rest of it. And they shut the door. And this is another example of Egypt refusing to take the Gazans, and also Jordan refusing to take them, and of course refusing to take Palestinians writ large here. Yeah. So yes, why not another idea and kick it around a little bit and see if there's a better way to do this than what we've been doing for 50 years?
Perfectly said. In the 20 or so seconds we have left, I want to end on an apparent very high note, and that is recruiting seems to be taking a turn for the better. How surprised are you about that?
Well, the services have worked very hard since they had recruiting failures a couple of years ago. They've all accomplished their recruiting objectives this year. And I know the Army, which I'm a little closer to, clearly is going to go beyond their recruiting objectives next year. And something that has always been true for the last several years is retention in the military has been high. Some of it actually record. So when reenlistment is high, it's the #1 indicator that morale is good and the people are satisfied with their lives and serving the country and feeling pretty good about the purpose and meaning of what they're doing.
I love that. The purpose and the meaning, indeed, and that is, of course, service for this country. General Jack Keane, a real pleasure, my friend. Have a wonderful weekend. Thank you for your time today.
Yeah, great talking to you, Kevin. Thank you.